Good evening. I'll call to order the Apache Junction Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. It is now 7 p.m. And if everyone would join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. And before we say the pledge, if everyone would, in commemoration of today's date, if everyone would take 30 seconds of silent remembrance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Present.
Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Present.
Chair Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Everyone here, we have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, consideration of approval of the agenda, and consideration of approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 28th, 2018. And before I ask for a motion, is there any comments, questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes?
once again, lack of detail in discussions or anything in the minutes is disturbing to me, and I don't approve. I want to see more detail in those minutes as far as what is discussed, not just that something was discussed.
Okay. So noted, and I ask for a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented and approve the minutes from the August 28th, 2018 regular meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings. The first being a presentation, discussion, and public hearing of case GPA-2-18 by Macmillan Manufactured Home Development Company at Lennar Homes, represented by Mr. Ralph Pugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rudy Esquivias. I'm the Senior Planner. Madam Chair, this is a general plan amendment by Macmillan Manufactured Home Development Company, represented by Mr. Pugh, and the Lennar Homes is the proposed developer. The property is located at the southwest corner of Old West Highway and Goldfield. It was rezoned back in 2000 from TH, Trailer Home Site Zone, to what we called back then local commercial district. Today we call it B1. The city, this rezoning was done in cooperation with the McMillan family. Our general plan at that time had designated the property a commercial, community commercial opportunity area. Back then it was called retail employment. So we did a city-initiated rezoning. Unfortunately, infrastructure has been very slow to reach the site. And over the years, since 2000, a few developers have looked at the property, but unfortunately nothing has ever come to fruition as far as development on the property. So case GPA 218 is a proposed land use map amendment to our general plan to redesignate the 38-acre property from community commercial to medium density residential. Our general plan defines a major amendment as a change in land use designation of 10 acres or more. So obviously if the property is 38 acres, they want to redesignate the whole property to a residential opportunity. That's why we're here before you with this general plan amendment. If the general plan amendment is successful, Lennar Homes proposes to come back and do a rezoning and a plating process for the property to create a plus or minus 178 lot conventional home single-family subdivision. You do have a conceptual plan in your packets. And so if this is approved, we hope to see the rezoning come back in relatively short order. Once again, the property, this is Old West Highway. Goldfield is on the east. There are some commercial zone properties, but undeveloped, commercial but undeveloped properties directly to the south of the site. To the east, we have some ADOT property. We have state land property. A little farther to the east of Goldfield, there are some private properties kind of in a little corner all by themselves. And then to the west of the site is an unincorporated Pinal County island, mostly residential properties. We also have some large lot residential properties to the south of the site. And then directly north of the site, across Old West Highway, we've got the Mountain View Lutheran Church. The Baptist Church is up in this area. A couple of small commercial lots, but mostly residential around the site. This is an aerial image of the site, a couple of minor washes going through the property. Once again, residential to the west, residential and commercial zoning to the south. ADOT dirt piles, stockpiles, state land property east of Goldfield, and some more residential and public institutional uses to the north of the site. This is the first conceptual plan by Lennar, once again, plus or minus 178 lots. Street improvements on 4 sides, that being Southern, Star, 28th Avenue, and Goldfield. We have received a comment from Goldfield because of the site's proximity to US 60. The developers and the folks at ADOT will need to coordinate on proper access to the property. I think there's also a median that extends down around the turn here at Old West Highway and Goldfield. So those types of details will be worked out during the rezoning process and during the plating process, but basically we see here a layout for a conventional single-family home neighborhood, landscaping throughout, a couple of little pocket parks which also double as retention areas, pretty straightforward subdivision design. We've taken this case to you for several meetings now. We had a work session with the commission, we had a work session with the city council, and then on the 28th, a couple of weeks ago, we had a public hearing. Under state law, we have to have 2 public hearings on general plan amendment cases. At the meeting on the 28th, held over at the fire district boardroom, we did hear from one neighbor who had questions about whether these were going to be 2-story homes versus 1-story homes. Because there's language in the application that possibly alludes to both. We, in between cases, I told the gentleman that we would address that more in detail at the time of the zoning. You may recall in other cases where folks expressed concern about 2-story development next to 1-story development. In a couple of cases, we have requested that the row of homes that is adjacent to the 1-story neighborhood that row be 1-story, and we've tried to mitigate, issues about views and about privacy and those types of things. But once again, that would be part of a rezoning proposal. Once again, I mentioned we also heard from ADOT regarding coordination on proper access to the property. The Planning Division recommends in favor of case GPA 218. This will allow for Lennar to then come in with their plating and rezoning proposal and proceed on to the next phase of development. And at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Anyone have questions for Rudy?
Madam Chair, yes.
Yes.
Rudy, you were talking about the coordination with ADOT as far as access off of Goldfield.
Yes.
At what cost does that come to either the city? Does that come to the city? Is that ADOT covering that? Is that covered by Lennar? Who is that?
It would be covered by Lennar as part of their off-site improvements. So whenever a developer builds a subdivision, part of their responsibility is to provide for half-street improvements around their development. So they would not be responsible for the full width of Goldfield. They would be responsible for the half of Goldfield that their development will impact. So in other words, if we look at this drawing here, if there are street improvements missing along the west half of Goldfield, then Lennar would be asked to provide those improvements in coordination with ADOT.
Would that also include access through the median by tearing up some of that median to access?
Well,
through
that
that,
is certainly
or-
one of the questions that would come up. I think the median is more in this area here. I don't remember all the improvements that are in here, but yes, it could include those types of details.
Okay, because that's one of the concerns that's been brought up to me as far as ingress, egress out of the area, that currently on the plan, there's only one. And safety would be paramount in this for 178 people. Should there be an emergency of some sort where everybody needed to be evacuated, that's only one way in and out, so there would need to be at least another ingress, egress access point.
Absolutely. There is, and you've got a couple of conceptual plans in your packets. There's one main entrance, in this option, there's one main entrance shown more or less in this area here. There is also a secondary entrance exit over here close to Southern.
Right
So
up the
yes,
star.
we would want to look for at least a couple of ways in and out of the development.
Okay, I was just curious about the costs and all that, but thank you.
Anyone else down here? Anyone down this way?
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Rudy, that area that's still zoned commercial?
Yes.
Who owns that? McMillan?
No, no, this was originally developed by a gentleman by the name of Raz Snake, but I think the property has been sold a couple of times since then. I'm not sure who owns it now, but I do know that the property is still zoned commercial. It is still subject to the plan development ordinance that approved, the plan called for a convenience store, gas station. I think it also included a little car wash. And then there was a more conceptual development plan for properties immediately to the west. So this was where the gas station was going to go. Then there was like a little strip center back here, and the property also wraps around just on the north side of the freeway. Who owns it now, I'm not sure, but if whoever owns it wants to develop it and they still want to develop the same plan, that's fine. If they want to change the plan, then they would have to come back to you and council for a plan development amendment.
Okay, so then, with the proposed general plan amendment, there's some language in your findings that indicates the city would have preferred that there might be some additional options made available for employment and commercial and all that.
Well-
Are we talking about that particular spot or?
No, we're
something-
talking about the 38 acres back in 1999. The 1999 general plan, was a different economy. There were different opportunities. We envisioned that this would be kind of a gateway commercial development to the city, and unfortunately, that never developed. So here we are, 18 years later. Infrastructure is still slow to get to the site. We do have some other commercial zone property on the south side of the freeway. And once again, the only thing that's developed on the south side of the freeway is the gas station. We were supposed to get a hotel there. We were supposed to get a couple of restaurants. There was going to be a hospital. That hasn't happened either. So there's kind of a cluster of commercial zoning here in the area. This property is a little far east. Maybe with the introduction of some medium-density residential development, folks will be encouraged to develop some of those commercial properties. But 38 acres, all commercial, today, under this economy, current market conditions, seems kind of like a long shot.
Yeah,
It would have been nice.
yeah. So then one other question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
The proposed land use designation, then, I'm just reading from some of the criteria for the GPA. The land use plan map does not adequately provide optional sites to accommodate. Help me
Well, in the east
help me
part of the
understand
city, if we, you know what, I didn't,
for, I don't know what that.
In this part of the city, Madam Chair, Commissioner Heck, on the north side of Old West Highway, I believe most of that is designated low-density residential, which is typically acre and a quarter zoning. Like I said, there are some exceptions. There's a couple of churches in there. On the south side of Southern, The general plan actually shows a mix of high-density residential and also, because there's a couple of mobile home parks between Tomahawk and Goldfield. Even though the zoning, that we've got that county island immediately to the west of the site, even though the zoning is all GR. Now, once we get west of Cortez, we have Jacobs Ranch, which started out as a mobile home park and then was converted over to a conventional home subdivision. But so the general plan doesn't have a medium density designation in this part of town. Is it wise to put one in here on a small property? Probably not, but on a 38-acre property, that's a land use decision. So in this part of town, we don't have a medium density designation. Is this an opportunity? Is this an opportunity that we deem good for that kind of density?
Based on the city's recognition or their understanding that it may be hard to develop anything, I mean, in terms of commercial and all, it just may be
Yes,
not,
sir. Right.
not a feasible option.
Mm-hmm. And we actually discussed, in our early discussions with Lennar, we discussed the possibility of maybe doing a mixed-use kind of thing. Maybe some commercial along Goldfield, transitioning maybe to some multifamily, transitioning to some single-family. But Lennar, this is what they do, and this was their preferred development plan.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
just want to follow up with what you just said as far as use, maybe not the wisest choice. What-
Well, is the
Explain that,
commercial
please.
designation still the best choice for the property, given current market realities and economic realities and the Far East location of the property?
I'm just kind of a little confused that if you don't think that would be the wisest usage of that property, what would be a wise choice? Other than, I mean, why are we changing it then, if it's not a wise choice?
Well, I think one of the reasons we're considering changing it is because 40 acres of commercial is probably not going to happen. It hasn't happened in 20 years. What's the possibility of it happening under current conditions? Probably not much better. So is this a good alternate?
Okay, it just struck me when you said not the wisest choice, so that kind of tells me that you have something else in mind.
Well, what we had in mind, like I explained a second ago, was a mixed use, but developer chose not to try a mixed use proposal.
It would seem to me that a mixed use might be a good idea to have some type of amenities for those residents that are there.
Yeah, and once again, there is still about 7 acres directly to the south of the property that's still zoned commercial, so there's still an opportunity in the area at the southeast corner of US 60 and Goldfield. There's also some commercial property zone there. Maybe this development will spark some of that commercial, some of that retail and sales tax and restaurants and things like that.
But there's no guarantee of that,
No,
whereas
no
with the
guarantee.
property they currently have in hand, there could be a guarantee that they put some mixed use there.
Under the current zoning, they could do commercial and multifamily, but not single-family. Because right now the zoning there is B1. So
Okay.
B1 allows for multifamily by conditional use permit, and certainly a whole host of retail and employment uses, but not single-family.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
if I may. Mr. Kryler, you said guarantee. There's no guarantee whatsoever. And you can ask the developer's attorney why. And he can explain that, I'm sure. But there's no guarantee.
Okay, well, fair enough, but I mean, they do own the property, they do have that option, whereas they don't have any controlling interest in the properties to the south.
Correct. Not that we're aware of.
That's kind of where I was going with the guarantee. Maybe that's not a good use of words, but more likely in the event that they would be open to that, I guess, might be a better way to phrase it. Okay, thank you.
Rudy, to build on what Steve's talking about, since this is the only really large piece of property in that immediate vicinity of the US 60 and Goldfield, a lot of times off the 60 is where people like, well, like U-Haul coming up, or Home Depot, or people like that build. Is no one ever checking with the city, anything about anything in that area?
Not those types of
Nobody,
uses, Madam
nothing.
Chair. We had, at one time, we were talking to a developer who wanted to do kind of a big box, light industrial type of development. And of course, you know, everybody wants to do RV storage lots or RV parks, and McMillan Manufactured Home Development Company, of course, they would have preferred to build a manufactured home park. So we have had phone calls for different types of commercial over the years, including storage. But once again, none of those developers ever took it very far.
No big commercial, no Home Depot, no grocery store, no, nothing.
No, not to my recollection.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions? Okay. If the developer would like to address us, please. Mr. Pugh? Hi.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Ralph Pugh, and my office address is at 1744 South Val Vista Drive in Mesa. It's a pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of Lennar Homes. Mr. Todd Scoro is here. He's the Senior Land Acquisition and Land Development Specialist for Lennar. Been around the valley a long time doing land use issues, and I'm glad he's here with us tonight. So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, you have heard this case both at study session, as Rudy indicated, and at the off-site hearing that was held a week or two ago. We do not intend to belabor the point here much, but we would like to highlight a few things and maybe answer some of the questions that were just raised. In a nutshell, our thought about this is that this acreage can serve the best purpose for the city of Apache Junction by bringing people to an area that can then support more commercial growth. It's somewhat of a misnomer to hope that we can bring commercial growth without a concomitant increase in people and disposable income. Those are the keys to success for commercial development. And in today's environment, I can tell you, having the opportunity to represent some of the Valley's largest commercial developers, even in well-established, highly populated communities, the brick-and-mortar retail business is vastly diminishing. We see very few new Home Depots in the Valley, very few new Lowe's. We just finished one between Gilbert and Queen Creek, and now we've heard that Lowe's isn't going to go forward with it. It's a highly unusual business these days when you can shop online, when you can go into some stores, Home Depot and others are thinking about smaller footprints, 3,000 or 4,000 square feet with one of everything they have, and then go see it and touch it and see what it is and order it online. Things are changing drastically. So on this site, we respectfully request that you consider that it's time now to change this. It's been a good idea for 18 years to try to get this to develop in a commercial or retail way. But because of the difficulty in bringing the utilities to the site, because of what's happening east of it, frankly, it limits the ability for a retail user to be willing to spend the money and the investment to come here. So our goal is to bring to the city a nice, well-done, medium-density residential project, and to bring people who can then live here, spend their money here, and encourage other development to occur. In a major general plan amendment, there are criteria that the staff and the board and the commission and the council ultimately look at. We provided you our answers to criteria questions in the narrative. We concur with the staff's analysis and their conclusions with respect to those criteria, and we would respectfully urge your recommendation of approval tonight on this case to the council. I would like to address Commissioner Kreidler's question, if I can, about mixed use. I didn't quite catch the question that it might have related to the property to the south. But mixed use developments, especially of a vertically integrated use, are very, very difficult. They are thriving somewhat in Tempe and downtown Phoenix. Even your sister city, Mesa, as large as it is, and as many human beings as live there, mixed use, true mixed use developments have only occurred in very isolated spots. And it takes a unique mix of demographics, logistics, and demand. And in order for mixed use projects to develop, it takes, more importantly, a highly specialized financing mechanism to do it. Lenders are used to loaning money on a commercial building or on a residential project or an industrial or office building. They get it, they see it, they lend the money on that project. Lending money to develop mixed-use projects is very unique and different. And lenders take a huge risk, and they're very picky about what they'll lend on. So I think the mixed-use potential in Apache Junction is in the future when commercial evolves along Old Main Street and some of that. Maybe then it can occur in a smaller way, but out this far and this close to the freeway, very hard to do. Could there be different uses in the area? Yes. There could be some commercial south of us. There could be some high density. As I remember, right, Rudy will straighten me out real quick, the land immediately west of this 38-acre site is in your general plan, I believe, for higher density residential. I think it is, but I don't remember, but I think that's the case. So you have plenty of opportunity there if that develops too. So, Madam Chair and Commissioner, I really don't want to bore you much tonight. We believe this is a meritorious case. It meets the criteria, and it is a good decision for the city of Apache Junction. And frankly, the McMillan family's been holding on now for 2 decades with literally nothing happening on it. So with that, Madam Chair, we urge your approval. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Pugh? Nobody? Well, you're getting off easy
Yeah,
tonight.
thank you. Well, we've been through some long nights together, so we'll keep it short.
I guess, Madam Chair,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's okay.
I can't let you off.
No, that's okay.
you can throw rocks at him later.
I guess just going back once again, so at least to have it in the record that, you know, this issue about ingress and egress from the development. I know we're talking about some other secondary means, but, you know, are you able to articulate any more about the conversations you had with ADOT?
Yeah, no, Madam Chair, Commissioner Heck, the conversations with ADOT have not evolved, and they are very, very preliminary. This is not unusual. We have a general plan amendment pending in Gilbert that's 1.5 miles from a freeway interchange, and ADOT wants to talk to us about access, okay? So this is a broad question they raise. We'll have to meet with ADOT on this, Goldfield and see what they're talking about, what their expectations are. We'll end up doing a traffic study. We typically use CivTech for that, and they produce a marvelous report, and then decisions will be made. But access to the site on Goldfield, Commissioner Heck and fellow commissioners, is no one wants dual movement there more than we do. We want vehicles to move into our site going north on Goldfield, turning left. We want them to be able to come south on Goldfield and turn right. And we want people to be able to exit onto Goldfield and turn north and go left.
Right.
So
Right.
those are details that you will see in the upcoming zoning case and that will be reviewed by your staff and the professionals in those various disciplines when it comes to a subdivision plat. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, because
Thank
my only observation is there's a traffic light not a whole lot, not too far away from that. So I don't know what creative juices will be flowing for you folks in ADOT, but I'm assuming that there is something when you have a median that you can create some kind of.
Yeah, and
you know,
those are both very good
I
points.
just can't.
And
I don't know they put a traffic light in because you'd have them so close together. I don't know.
the spacing may not be right
Yeah.
for that, and the separation distances may not be right. But the real issue is dealing with ADOT. And that just takes time and a lot of patience and professionals in the traffic and engineering world who can make those kind of decisions for safety and movement of vehicles. No question.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Rudy, I have a question for you to maybe answer what Peter's asking, which is a very good question. Before any zoning change or anything like that, that would be hashed out at that
Yes, ma'am.
time.
Yes.
It's not so much on this as it is, it would have to be resolved and shown exactly where it's gonna be and
Yes, ma'am. As part,
How it's gonna work.
definitely as part of the plating proposal, but it can be a preliminary condition on any rezoning proposal. In other words, when we get the rezoning case in, we would hope that our friends at Lennar also give us their preliminary plat. And a preliminary plat is usually, you know, how the final plat's gonna look, and those types of details would be worked out at that time.
so we can tell Mr. Pugh now that get ready for his preliminary plat when they come for the rezoning. Okay,
But I guess an associated question with that, if their preliminary plat came back and it was right turn only out of the development, they could determine that's the only realistic.
Or you could condition that they find some solution for full,
So we can make
We can.
that,
full access, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe the main entrance doesn't necessarily have to be on Goldfield. This is one of the things we've talked about. Maybe it's on Old West Highway at that northeast corner. Maybe it's on Southern. There's always options.
okay,
does that satisfy everybody?
okay.
Okay. We'll open this up to this gets opened up to the public, right? This
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the- Okay. Does anyone in the public wish to speak on this issue? Frank, come on down. State your name and address.
Frank Shanebeck, 525 East Fred Avenue, Apache Junction. Madam Chair, members of the commission, as a representative of Mountain View Lutheran Church, we hope to welcome this development. We could use some company out in the far remote reaches of Apache Junction. I noticed that the remoteness was mentioned twice, at least in the report. So basically, for the reasons the city staff has presented, we urge acceptance of this approval, a motion. For one thing, I'd rather see houses there than a commercial development as far as traffic goes. And that's our own selfish interest, as well as it's in our own interest in the church to have family development nearby. In looking at the big picture, I think it is in the best interest of the community. Chances of getting something commercial in there are minimal. This is something real. It's in front of us right now. It can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi. Good evening. My name's Jason Sinelli. Thank you. I live at 2571 South Acacia Road. Interesting thing, that address used to be J. Bardee Lane back in 1967. My father-in-law homesteaded a home right there. Star Road used to be called Birch Lane. The house across the street was Mrs. Birch's house. Long story short, we've enjoyed a view of the mountain from that spot for a long time. Years ago, we heard there was going to be a development, commercial development. I've been there since '92, and we heard there was commercial development. We were very worried about the light that would come off of that development. I was one of the people in favor of this development. I'm also in favor of having the utilities extended down the road to our house to close off the lines. And so that's all I wanted to say. I also wanted to thank each and every one of you for serving on this committee. Over the years, I've seen a lot come out of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you don't get thanked enough. So good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public portion and open this up for any discussion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I look at, this is just an opinion or an observation, I look at Tomahawk and the homes that were built there just south of the 60. And then what starts popping up is a dealership and restaurants, and I think there's an RV park going in. So I guess what I'm saying is this idea of putting in this residential area is only going to encourage commercial building south of it, more than likely. I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Anyone else down here? No, please?
Actually, I think
Thomas
I think it's a great idea. I think our community needs it, and I look forward to having family community.
Okay. Willie? Peter? Anything?
I too, as Commissioner McGraw stated, that if it's, it's commercial follows rooftops, that kind of concept, that would spur the creation of commercial there. So for that, I think it's an opportunity to utilize that land, bring some more folks into the community in a single-family homes. So again, my only hang-up, as I've stated relentlessly, is the ingress and egress. So.
But that's easily
Right, and we'll be
we'll
looking.
catch that one.
We'll be looking at that.
Okay.
carefully.
If there's no more discussion, I'll call for a motion.
Okay. All right, Madam Chair.
Yes?
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council the approval of General Plan Amendment Case GPA-2-18, a request by Macmillan Manufactured Home Development Company, LC, represented by Ralph Pugh, to redesignate an approximately 38-acre property located at the southwest corner of South Goldfield Road and East Old West Highway from community commercial to medium-density residential for the purpose of facilitating a subsequent rezoning and platting process for a conventional single-family home, non-age restricted neighborhood, subject to the findings listed below. So, finding A. And I'm going to ask for input from the commission on these various findings.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. We
Right.
don't want those here on this one, do we?
I have to interrupt. You can't. If you're making the motion, you have to make the motion.
Okay,
And then then someone would second it, or you could have discussion on it. There is a way to do that. But you should make the motion, because if you want to talk about the conditions, then maybe someone should withdraw the motion now and now discuss it before you make the motion. Because it gets very confusing. If you're making a motion,
but I
and
have
then
to
all of a
make a
sudden.
motion based on the findings, right?
Right, but then if you have others start having input, now you're really not making the motion. Now others are. Unless,
Oh,
'cause they're
I
gonna-
was just having them make comment on these findings. No?
Okay. Well, I think this is part of your motion, though, so I don't think that would be appropriate. So I think you may want to withdraw the motion now and just open it up for discussion on the findings and on the conditions. And then you make a motion.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Discuss them.
I got it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so Madam Chair, I
Withdraw.
make a motion to withdraw my recommendation at this particular point in time.
Okay. And we'll open this back up.
You need a second
A
Oh.
second.
Yeah.
and a vote.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Okay. We have the motion withdrawn, and we'll go back to discussing
Fine.
findings.
Okay. All right, so, sorry about that, folks.
Commissioner Heck,
I
can I
was-
ask a question?
Please.
Does the does not kind of confusing? Is that what
Yes.
it boils down to? Okay.
Right, well, only because I am looking at the staff's, I'm looking at their findings, and then I'm asking for the commission to look at how do they look at staff's findings versus what we determine as a commission, and whether or not it's consistent with theirs.
So we've pretty much went through this. We're just got to designate if it is does not, is not, and we can probably get through this pretty quickly. Would you agree?
Sure. Depends on how long we want to discuss it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Heck, are there particular findings you wish to discuss?
Well, I guess the very first finding that I had was because the staff's input was that the land use designation or the land use plan map does not adequately provide optional sites to accommodate. So it's right from the very beginning, the first finding is they're saying it does not
But they're,
meet that.
question if it's approved or denial, it's in there for if you want to approve it or deny it.
That's the motion, that's not the finding.
Madam Chair, I recommend that, I find that all the staff findings are correct. And I think, I recommend that we follow all the staff findings.
Fine. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
Peter, what do you have written down there?
Let's hear what,
No, it's
we can
okay.
hear it.
No, we're not going to waste our time on
Well,
this,
are they
so-
important?
Nope.
Madam Chair,
not.
if I could
You're not.
interrupt here, but I think that finding by staff, if you look at the city, whether it's north of Southern or Pixham Street, we're struggle right now with finding sites that are larger than 5 or 10. You know, Mr. Kaufman found, what, a 20 or 22 acre site. He has another 20 acre site. So I think that's really what that finding is really. It's not just maybe this geographic area, but if you look at the area either west of the Y or to the south, essentially the city is built out, and all we have left are these little 5 and 10, and developers struggle to find 15-acre sites to do conventional single-family home development. So this developer came by, talked to the current owner, and said, hey, we'd like to do a 178-lot subdivision on 38 acres. For the city, that's unique unless you went south of Baseline. Then we have 7,700 acres. But in this part of the city, we have very little developable land, and again, without utilities. So they have to bring utilities. So this, as Rudy had indicated, this could have been developed 2 recessions ago, maybe, if utilities were in the area. Does that help at all, Peter?
Yes.
At least that first one, anyway. I don't know about, okay.
It's just that they identified it as not being in compliance, so, but whatever. All right. So now we're waiting for a motion, or does anybody else have anything they want to add before I
Madam
open my
Chair,
mouth
Yes.
and insert my foot?
Madam Chair, could you order Commissioner Heck to open his mouth and insert his foot? I'd like to see what he had, I'd like to hear what you had written down there, Peter.
No, it's not important, it's not important. It's not. No,
That's
it's okay,
important.
it's not.
Okay.
So let's move on.
Do we?
Well, if you
I'm
want to go,
backpedaling more here
Well,
than
let's
I
just
know.
rip through this,
Madam
does it?
Chair,
Or
yeah.
does not?
Madam Chair, if you
Yeah.
might want to go through each
I was going to say,
finding like Mr. Heck
we can
was
just say
about to
yes or
do,
no.
and then just agree, is that a yes or a no on those?
Okay. Let's start with finding number 1, the land use map proposes a land use designation that the land use map does or does not adequately provide optional sites to accommodate.
It does. I think it does.
It does.
Yeah, I think it does.
Everyone agree?
Yep.
The second one, the land use map does or does not constitute an overall improvement to the general plan and is not solely for the benefit of this particular landowner at a particular point in time, and is consistent with the overall intent of the general plan. Yes or no?
It does.
It does.
The land use map, the amendment is or is not justified by an error in the 2010 general plan.
Is,
Map
It is.
is,
It is.
because they stated it was, yes. The land use map amendment is or is not generally consistent with goals, objectives, and other elements of the 2010 general plan.
It is.
I
Yes.
think it is.
The land use map amendment is or is not justified by a change in community conditions or neighborhood characteristics since adoption of the plan. Yeah, because it was commercial and no commercials coming along for 18 years. The land use map amendment will or will not adversely impact a portion of or the entire community. By significantly altering acceptable existing land use patterns, especially in established neighborhoods. Will not?
will not.
No, will not adversely.
Will or will not significantly reduce the housing to jobs balance in the planning area? I don't see how it's gonna reduce anything.
It will not adverse.
It will or will not substantially decrease existing and future water supplies.
Will not.
Who knows? I don't know.
Any subdivision has to have a 100-year water supply. This is in the Arizona
That's state
water.
law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
The amendment will or will not replace employment with residential uses?
Will not.
Well, it could, but we aren't getting any, so it must
I
not.
believe it would, yeah.
Yeah. It will, no, we're back, yeah, we're still, will or will not require additional and more expensive improvements to infrastructure systems or proximity to municipal facilities and/or services than are needed to support the prevailing land use and which, therefore, may impact the level of services for existing and proposed developments in other areas. Well, they have to do their own roads. They have to do their own gutters and sidewalks and everything. And I don't see how it's gonna take water away from the church or anything. So I'd say is not. Agree?
Will not.
Will or will not increase traffic without mitigating measures on existing roadways beyond the planned level of service and that negatively impact existing and planned land uses. 140 homes,
178.
170, 100.
You're gonna be providing a traffic study
Yeah.
before.
So I don't see how, at this point, we can always build that in the future of how many ingress and egress to mitigate that, right?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Lost my page here. We're still on will or will not affect the existing character of the immediate area. All it is a desert, so it can't negatively affect it. Will or will not increase the exposure of residents to aviation, aviation-generated noise, safety, and/or flight operations? Not hardly. And will or will not materially diminish the environmental quality of the air, water, land, or cultural resources? I'd assume no. And last but not least, it will or will not significantly alter recreational amenities such as open space, parks, and trails. There's only 2 washes there, so I don't think it's going to affect that. So, there's our findings. So we want to return to a motion, Peter?
Yes. Okay. All right. I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council the approval of General Plan Amendment Case GPA-2-18, a request by Macmillan Manufactured Home Development Company, LC, represented by Ralph Pugh, to redesignate an approximately 38-acre property located at the southwest corner of South Goldfield Road and East Old West Highway from community commercial to medium-density residential for the purpose of facilitating a subsequent rezoning and platting process for a conventional single-family home, non-age-restricted neighborhood, subject to the findings listed below. And the Commission determined that all the findings A through F did meet the expectation or the requirement for that particular item. So all of that is acceptable. And the commission also, or the additional, or the motion also includes one condition. And that condition number 1 is the applicant will assure that an acceptable and permitted means of ingress and egress be approved by any related agency to allow north and southbound travel from the development.
Is that adequate for you, Rudy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair. This case goes to City Council next week for their public hearing and final decision.
Okay. We'll move on to, I lost my place. We'll move on to presentation, discussion, and public hearing of case GPA-1-18 and PZ-2-18 by Americo Real Estate Company and U-Haul International, represented by David Pollock.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, my name is DeLon Valander, Senior Economic Development Specialist for the city. Grateful for the opportunity to do a brief presentation for the commission in regards to the economic development impacts or potential impacts of this particular application. I'd like to start with just a little bit of background and relation for the benefit of the commission and for the members of the public that are here. Americo, who is the applicant and representative of the property at this point in time, purchased the land several years ago, shortly after the last recession. They, after a period of time, proposed a U-Haul project a couple of years ago. Original proposal lacked staff support. As you well know, we've discussed a lot of different storage proposals in the past. And so with that, U-Haul came back and requested staff's input in regards to what is the city's vision for this area, what would we like to see, what would be beneficial for the city of Apache Junction in this area. In that sense, city staff had conversations with U-Haul in regards to employment and commercial and how both of those impact our city at this point in time. As you well know, this was it was zoned as a large commercial retail project. The city is very dependent upon commercial sales taxes for city services. So commercial is definitely an element that we look at as one of the industries that we continue to seek after to buoy up our economy. In addition, though, for those commercial and retail aspects to be successful, we need to have employment. We have to have jobs that have enough discretionary income that they can spend it, that our residents can spend additional monies to support that new retail. So in that sense, we definitely are lacking an employment corridor and employment sector in our local economy. In addition, the city and the applicant spent some time researching independently and came together with a few of the regional experts in relation to industrial developments and business park developments. We had meetings with GPEC, and the city had meetings with GPEC alone and with the applicant as well together. Through that research and time, both the city and the applicant, or the city's economic development department and the applicant, saw value in moving forward with the project or the application and project as it's proposed at this point in time. So U-Haul provided, after all of these meetings, they provided a conceptual plan that could accommodate both of these future opportunities that the city discussed in terms of vision, with a commercial component and an industrial component on this land. We've worked with U-Haul very closely. City staff and U-Haul came together to determine a good set of uses and uses that we wanted to exclude from the property to ensure that the industrial side wouldn't turn into a heavy industrial user with lots of empty storage yards, lots of contractor yards, that type. The intended purpose with the industrial is to produce a zoning ordinance that would be flexible but also offer the opportunity for employment and jobs. So the concept proposed essentially, the top part of the property is US 60. Idaho runs on the west side. The U-Haul portion of the development, the conceptual, is up in the northwest corner. The industrial acreage is on the east side of the property. It's about 40, give or take 40 plus acres. And then the remaining acreage is the commercial, which looks orange on the screen up here, but it should be red on your screens. So real brief summary. What are we doing? This application is for a general plan amendment. As Rudy discussed earlier, and as you guys have just found with the previous applicant, this is a large site, over 10 acres, so it has to go through a major plan amendment to change over from a commercial to an industrial use. So essentially what this amendment is asking for is redesignation of these 80 acres split apart into 30 acres of commercial and 50 acres of industrial business park designation. Why are we doing this? Again, from the standpoint of the city's economic development department, we have not had the flexibility and the opportunity to respond to business relocates that would bring larger numbers of jobs and higher wage jobs. The primary factor, one of the primary factors in that, is that we are highly underzoned for industrial and business park uses. There are only there's three other areas in the city that are zoned industrial at this point in time. Immediately to the east of this is a small, it's a park of about the same size. It's about 40 acres. It was developed a few years back with smaller industrial uses, light industrial uses. On 17th Avenue, right across from where the Kaufman development is, there's a block, 17th and 18th Avenue, that has an industrial zoning. Those lots are all about acre lots, and they're filled with storage yards, contractor storage type of uses. And then if you shift over to the west side of the city on Meridian, just south of where Safeway is, there's also another smaller light industrial area that has a planned development on it. There's just a few acres that are unused at this point in time. And again, in that area, it's smaller acreage. There's a recycling center, there is a contractor storage yard, and then there's a business that's doing diesel repair in there. So we really don't, as an economic development department, have the ability to respond to a user that's looking for more than 3 acres. That's the largest contiguous acreage that we have that's industrial. And so over this period of 5 years that I've been with the city, I was looking back at our records, and I gave you a number a few sessions ago of about 25 per year requests that we get in from our regional partners per year. I'd like to correct that. It is actually on the average of about 75 requests annually that come in through GPAC and through the ACA. And the majority of those, over those 5 years, I would say that we probably have been able to respond to less than 10. And a good majority of the reason why we can't respond is we just don't have the land or buildings. So this project would create the opportunity, not necessarily out of the ground buildings at this point in time, but it would rectify the situation of not enough industrial land on the general plan and properly zoned. So the benefits to the city is an increased ability to respond to our regional business relocation interests, whether that's coming directly into the city offices or through our partners or through the city going out and doing recruitment of business interests. The primary thing that creates the opportunity is it removes about a 9 to 18 month process that would be required to go through this general plan amendment. Again, I used this example before. If a project came in today requesting to be at this particular site, they would have to go through a general plan amendment, but they couldn't do it until next year in September. So they would be 12 months out at the earliest before they would even have the opportunity to start discussing rezoning or subdivision or any of that. So this removes that long process that a company might need to go through to come here. I had a conversation with Mitchell Allen today with GPAC, and typically if there is a public process that pushes past 4 to 7 months, the sites are removed immediately off of the site selector's list of potential sites for relocates. So this moves us into an entirely new category where we can start to become responsive. And then lastly, this is initiated by the landowner. The landowner came in with a project in mind. They listened to what the city's vision and desires were, and they have come back with a crafted response to try to fulfill some of those. And they, through this process, didn't come in saying, we'll do whatever you want. They said, let us make sure that this is something that makes sense for us as well. We want to be a good partner, but we don't want to do something that may have a negative impact for us just so that we can get a project through. So they've been able to see value in making some of these strides as well. So that's it. That's all I have. If you guys have any, or if members of the commission have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Rudy will go into much deeper depth on the details of the
Any
application.
questions for
Madam Chair?
Elon? Yes.
Elon, I noticed that, and I don't know who prepared this, it was you or Rudy, but I noticed some new language, B1PD Power Center. What exactly is a power center? I could not find anything in city code as far as a definition for that.
I'll allow Rudy to answer that.
It's,
Allow is not the right word.
it's a generic term. The zoning on the property was formerly for an 80-acre retail, restaurant, shops, businesses development on the entire 80 acres, including big box stores, major anchor tenants, minor anchor tenants. Basically, by proposing to reserve about 28 acres of the property for that type of development, maybe it's not a power center, but it's a smaller scale type of commercial retail development that could still offer opportunities for a couple of big boxes, plus the minor tenants and possibly some commercial pads as well. So it's kind of a generic term. It's not something that we specifically define in the zoning ordinance.
I found it interesting because I hadn't seen it in anything else yet, and I just was wondering, what is the definition of a power center?
Right.
Is that an anchor, a one anchor store or location? What is it? Because I couldn't find anything.
Right.
You know,
It could include a couple of anchors and minor, and some out restaurant parcels, maybe a gas station on the corner. Typical, like the Fry's is maybe an example of a smaller retail / power center. I don't know.
I think isn't it that, they had a sign down there when they were going to build south of the 60 on Idaho, back 2008.
Right.
They had a sign down there, and it said, "Coming Future Power Center."
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like you say, a marketing thing. It's
probably a
where the
marketing
word
thing more
comes
than-
I was
from.
just looking for a definition, so I knew how to prepare.
Yeah, but what I mean is, that's the only way we ever saw it was from
But
that
that's-
sign.
But that's seeing it, but what is there a city definition?
No.
That's what I was wanting to find out, because I couldn't find one.
There's not a specific definition.
And because it was the first time it was being used that I saw, I wanted some clarification.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh. Rudy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a combined general plan amendment request and rezoning request. A little bit of background, back in 2007, the 78-acre property was rezoned from CI 1PD, light industrial plan development with no development plan, by the way, to C3 PD, general commercial by plan development for the development of a retail power center with big box stores, shops, restaurants, tenant pads, approximately 6,000 square feet of retail and commercial opportunity space. As we all know, there was a depression back in 2008. The project was never built. Amerco, who was the master developer in this proposal, bought the property in 2011. We've been holding discussions with Amerco and U-Haul representatives since early 2012 about repurposing the property for a different project. So case GPA 118 is a proposed land use amendment to the city's general plan to redesignate approximately 50 acres of the 78-acre property from community commercial to light industrial business park. Right now, on our general plan, the entire plus or minus 80-acre property is designated a commercial community commercial opportunity area. If this general plan amendment is approved, about 50 acres would be redesignated to a light industrial business park opportunity area, which would allow for the B5 zoning to come in with a recommended palette of uses, which would allow for more intense things that your typical commercial zones would not normally allow, and hopefully provide some of these opportunities that Alon spoke about. So, in companion to the proposed land use redesignation is a proposed rezoning of the 50 acres from B1 PD to B5 PD, light industrial business park by plan development, and then the remaining 28 acres of the property immediately at the northeast corner of Baseline in Idaho would still be zoned B1 PD. At this point, we know that U-Haul wants to construct a moving and storage facility, basically at the northwest corner of the site on about 10 acres. The east half of the 40 acres would be reserved and conceptually planned for light industrial, and once again, the remaining 28 would still be zoned B1 for future commercial opportunities. This drawing here kind of illustrates what's going on. Once again, this entire 78 acres is currently designated community commercial. The proposal is to take this part of the property and redesignate it light industrial business park. And then the 28 acres we talked about is still remains in here as community commercial. This is just a different graphic of the same thing. The gray is turning to light industrial. The red remains community commercial. This is a conceptual land use plan that the applicants have shared with us, and I need to underline this is very conceptual. The U-Haul portion of the property would be up here. This is probably the more well-developed at this time portion of the proposed development. We don't know what's going to come in here yet. We're not exactly sure how this is going to lay out yet, but this gives us an idea of how the property might develop. And once again, the nearest example is Baseline Industrial, directly to the east of the property on the other side of Winchester. Baseline Industrial was developed with various industrial lots. There was some shared retention concepts in there. There are private streets, and I think the streets were designed with sidewalk on one side for general commercial industrial uses. They do have an owners association there, and the owners association has done a really good job of trying to keep the development looking nice, not letting the more obnoxious things move in, even though it's not zone plan development. So the idea here on the U-Haul site is maybe we can do something similar to or nicer than Baseline Industrial, and once again keep out the more incompatible uses, the storage lots, the contractor things, the tow lots that you see in many other parts of the city. You know, those uses are being accommodated elsewhere. We don't necessarily want to see those things. Well, we don't want to see those things come into this proposed industrial development. The zoning, once again, this graphic is exactly the same as the general plan amendment, except that this also illustrates the part of the property that's proposed to be rezoned under case PZ 218. Unfortunately, the audience can't see this very well. You can, I think you can see it on your monitors, but staff and the applicants work together on an exclusions list. So the B1 PD part of the property, in other words, the 28 acres at the southwest corner of the property, there would be some commercial uses excluded from that property, including storage lots, medical marijuana, piercing establishments, soup kitchens, government facilities. We're trying to make it a commercial, retail, job generating, employment generating, sales tax generating opportunity area. And this list over here is a list of exclusions that we recommend for the industrial part. And once again, you know, animal slaughtering, RV storage, and by the way, folks, that's probably the one item that staff and the applicants disagree on. The applicants would like for their U-Haul facility to include some RV storage. Staff is recommending against it, and in a little bit we'll show you why. Once again, we've taken these cases to you for a couple of, and City Council for a couple of discussions. Ilan has explained how the proposal has evolved up to this point. Two separate areas, a plan development area for commercial, plan development area for industrial. The intent of the exclusion list is to try and create opportunities for retail, office, clean industry, buildings on properties, not just storage yards, and other incompatible unsightly uses that can be found in other parts of the city. At your public hearing a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Pollock stated that Americo will be the master developer of the site, not just the U-Haul site. So they are in it for the long haul. They don't want to see you know, incompatible uses or unsightly uses develop next door on their property either. He showed us a couple of examples of other similar developments. One was in Queen Creek, one is proposed in Buckeye, and I think he also had another one from Colorado. He stated that Amerco is providing with CB Richard Ellis to market the site to various businesses. Commissioners had comments, questions about possible surrounding development, types of businesses they were trying to attract, fears of other business owners in town with regard to a large U-Haul facility. A couple of commissioners brought up the fact that the city is not favorable towards any more RV storage lots, and that the city wants and needs jobs and sales tax revenue. By the way, one of the items I gave to you tonight is, since our staff report went out last week, there has been a little bit of communication back and forth about what is taxable, what is not taxable. I, by no means, am the city's tax expert. That would be Kathy, that would be Ann Wenk in the city clerk's office. What's taxable as far as rental, as far as the items that they sell, how vehicle rentals are taxed, how equipment rentals are taxed. I don't know about that. That's probably more of a discussion that the city council is going to get into, but I did want to relay some information that is also obviously an important topic of discussion for you as well as for our council. Okay, why no more RV storage lots in the city? Well, folks, we sat around, Larry, myself, Danielle, the other folks in the office, and we put together a list of our storage lot inquiries just in the last couple of years. So we've got a list here of about at least 20 properties that folks have called us on, that we've had meetings about, that I've picked up the phone and answered questions. These are the ones we could remember off the top of our heads. As far as recent inquiries, everybody wants to do storage lots in Apache Junction. Everybody's looking for that 5-acre lot, that 4-acre lot that's still sitting there vacant. Hey, can I put RV storage on it, or can I put a mobile home park on it? And we've been very consistent about saying, no, we're not really interested in any more RV storage lots. Why aren't we interested in any more storage lots? Well, because then we have this list of storage lots that we already have in the city. And these properties here are existing developed properties within our city limits and immediately around our city limits. I think a couple of these are on the other side of Meridian. A couple of these are in the county islands. So we've got, a good 19, 20 storage lots already in the city, and most of these are specifically RV storage lots. And once again, this list shows you that we get many requests still for storage lots. So anyway, just kind of a quick graphic of why we're trying to steer away from storage lots. The last case you had was VIP storage, where they had an existing storage lot. They wanted to make it bigger. It was right in the heart of town. Commission said no. We're trying to be consistent with recommending against storage lots. However, we do recommend in favor of the general plan amendment to create a more economic development opportunity for industrial users of the type that Ilan described. We also recommend in favor of the rezoning, subject to the recommended conditions in our staff report dated today, and along with the palettes of uses. And very quickly, Madam Chair, the conditions that I'm presenting here on the PowerPoint are paraphrased. Okay, they've been summarized a little bit from the conditions that are in your staff report, but basically our recommended conditions would include design of buildings, landscape features in compliance with all city codes, applicants comply with conceptual development plans. Of course, we are still expecting for a proposed subdivision concept to come in. How do they want to create the industrial park that they envision? So that is another process that will come to you separately. The zoning and the general plan amendment create the opportunity for them to come back with their proposed development plan. Future pads, retail areas, A and B shall be architecturally compatible. A question came up about that today. What does architecturally compatible mean? We do have design guidelines, and the design guidelines basically apply to commercial uses. In our recommendations, we're also asking that the city's design guidelines apply to the industrial buildings. We don't want to see any metal buildings, anything bigger than 120 square feet. It can be a metal shell, but it must be architecturally treated on its exterior. The idea here being that the retail area will probably have its own architectural character for a retail type environment. The industrial area may have a different architectural character, being an industrial development, but compatibility includes signage. If you architecturally integrate your monument signs with the look of your buildings, that's typically what we mean by architecturally compatible. We've done it in many developments like the Harley-Davidson, the Fry's, the new Fry's, the old Fry's, the Connolly Plaza down on Idaho. So it's a type of principle that we've employed regularly. Upon rezoning approval, property owners shall dedicate to the city any necessary right-of-way. We know we've got Idaho on the west, we've got Baseline on the south, we've got Winchester on the east. They are, one of the concepts that we saw, I think your newer concept there for the U-Haul site also shows a 34th Avenue connector on the south side of the proposed U-Haul development. The city has long envisioned another through road between Baseline Industrial Park and Idaho, so we believe this is the opportunity to get that road. We also had a discussion here the last couple of weeks about how much right-of-way does the city need on Idaho. Some of you may recall a number of years ago, we were looking at a possible parkway concept for the power center, but also as a gateway into the future state lands properties to the south of Baseline. Idaho is the last road that we have an opportunity to create a parkway type of entrance to the future of the city, which is to the south. You know, Tomahawk is built out, Ironwood is built out, Meridian's built out, Goldfield is built out. So Idaho is the last remaining opportunity to try and create something nice that to lead us into the future, which is, once again, south of Baseline. For that reason, we are asking for a 75-foot wide half right-of-way on Idaho. So the applicants would be asked to develop their half of the road, and at a future point in time, the developers of the property to the west of Idaho would develop the other half of the road. Street improvements along the property's adjacent interior, including but not limited to extension of pavement, sidewalks, curbing, gutters, fire hydrants, all the normal street improvements to be determined by the city engineer. Street improvements may be phased in as development occurs on the property. However, we're asking that half street improvements be constructed on Idaho from US 60 to Baseline, and that the full width of the street improvement for East 34th Avenue, once again, that connector between Winchester and Idaho, also be constructed as part of a first phase development, and we are asking that 34th Avenue be a 50-foot wide public roadway, similar to the internal roadways in Baseline Industrial Park. Retention basins per our normal standards, building-mounted monument freeway signs. In their rezoning proposal, they did propose some standards for larger signage, taller signage. We're okay with that as long as it relates to big boxes. I don't think we quite agreed with the maximums they were requesting, but we are agreeable to larger signs and more, once again, architecturally integrated and compatible signage. Maximum heights for buildings, this is a planned development deviation. They're asking for 45 feet. The B1 PD areas will adhere to normal heights. So the 45 feet is in the industrial areas. The B1 areas are normal building heights. Storage carts, if we have a future shopping center, it's another landscape issue. I'm sorry, for skip. When applicants, developers agree to contribute to the cost of any necessary traffic signals. In the ordinance of approval for the Diversified Partners Power Center, there was a condition in there that quoted a figure of about $75,000 that the applicants at that time were being asked to contribute towards a traffic signal. I believe it was Idaho and Baseline. Those figures are from 12 years ago. So 11 or 12 years ago, we don't know what the cost of a traffic signal is today. Once again, that's the type of detail that we normally look at, and the developer's engineer provides cost estimates for those kinds of things. So those types of details are still to be worked out, and we would expect to do that during the planning process. Developers responsible for all necessary permits, all improvements. Developers shall identify on all site plans accommodations for motorcycle and bicycle racks, so there's an opportunity there to gain some credits for motorcycle and bicycle parking. The permitted uses in the B1 PD zoning district shall be in accordance with the list that you have in your packets. And once again, we already talked about the exclusions of the more obnoxious stuff, and the same thing for the permitted uses in the B5 PD zoning district to include some of the more undesirable things. Future land divisions, the moment they hit a fourth lot, we're into a subdivision process. We've already had discussions about that. And as always, any request for deviation from the plan development conditions of approval need to come back through you and council for a plan development process. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Rudy, I know I saw in here, as far as the, somewhat of a timeline as far as making the improvements on roadways and whatnot is things are being built. But is there any type of timeline involved here, some like hard dates, a year, 18 months, whatever?
We don't have
as
a
completion of
development
things?
proposal in hand at this time, but I suspect that, and certainly Mr. Pollock can speak to this better than I can, but I believe they want to get started on the U-Haul site right away. That's why we married one of our conditions to that first phase development, that when that site is developed, that they also include the street improvements in Idaho and the street improvements on 34th Avenue. Larry can talk to you folks about the city's transportation multimodal plan that's currently going through our processes. There are a couple of concept cross-sections for parkways that J2 has produced for the city. We have not taken those to council yet for approval. So we are pretty much ready to talk to Amerco about what a parkway concept might be as part of a first phase development.
Okay, thank you.
Matt? Robert?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Hey, Rudy. From what I understand, some of the pros to rezoning this to light commercial is because the city's in desperate need of light commercial, property.
Light industrial?
Like, that's what I mean, I'm sorry, light industrial. But now, since Americo actually owns this property, wouldn't, besides our regulations, wouldn't the discretion of what goes in there actually be up to them?
The discretion to
Like, for example, you're saying, hey, we get all these inquiries about, light industrial, we can't accommodate. But by rezoning this, we are able to accommodate.
Right.
But wouldn't that really be up to them, whether or not they would want to accommodate any inquiries that do come in through the city?
Yes, as long as they don't conflict with the recommended exclusions. In other words, if somebody comes in and says, wow, I really want a site for medical marijuana, well, sorry, it's not within the plan development. You have to do a plan development amendment process or look for a property elsewhere.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. Besides our, we do have our restrictions, but I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that, ultimately, if let's say you come across something that would be a good fit, and America goes, no, we don't want there. Well, then that's just the end of the story, right? It doesn't go there.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they own the property.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So Rudy, just maybe help me understand the whole signage thing. So it says building-mounted monument and freeway signs shall be incorporated into and/or designed to complement architectural styles. So is it possible that going down Idaho Road, that there could be all these monument signs for all those light industrial businesses there that are?
Well, probably not so much on Idaho Road. I mean, the U-Haul site would certainly be entitled to its own monument sign. We have reserved an opportunity for perhaps multi-tenant monument signs along the freeway, maybe one that could be used for the future retail, and maybe another one that could be used for some of the uses that are going in the industrial park. Typically, our sign code allows one monument sign per street frontage per parcel, so not that there's going to be 20 monument signs in Idaho as part of an integrated commercial development. You may have a couple. For example, Fry's, the old Fry's. They have 3 signs. They have one on Phelps, they have one on Apache Trail, they have one on Idaho. The new Fry's, you may recall, came to you with a conditional use permit request to have several monument signs of their development. They have 6 lots, 6 or 7 lots, and they got 6 monument signs, not all of which are necessarily our one per lot, but as part of the overall development sign and a conditional use permit approval, you gave them a comprehensive sign package. We would probably expect to see something similar with the development of this site, including the freeway signs, which are taller than normally allowed. I think our code still says 25 above adjacent nearest freeway grade. So, maybe not as tall as the Ford sign, but probably it's as tall as or taller than the Empire sign or a couple of those other signs along the freeway.
Okay, all right.
Michael? Willie? Nothing? Okay, thank you, Will.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Rudy? Would the developer like to address us, please?
Good evening, Madam Commissioner, members of the Commission. My name is David Pollock. I'm the Development Manager for America Real Estate. And tonight I have with me some of our staff. We have Julio Lugo, one of the planners, General Dan, who is the planner on this project, who will handle the site plan process. I also brought with me tonight and asked to join us is Andy Smith. Andy is the company president for U-Haul of the East Valley, and there was some questions about operations specifically to the U-Haul, and there was also some questions regarding U-Haul and the relationship to their affiliates. So as we go along, if we need to, Andy will be able to specifically answer some of those questions. I do want to thank staff for their presentation. A lot of detail, a lot of exciting stuff in there, and a lot of information for you to digest to make a decision. But I think there's a couple things that I want to kind of simplify my presentation tonight, and to kind of so that we can better understand what this is about. And for America Real Estate, and Madam Commissioner, since you weren't here last week, America Real Estate is the real estate and development company for U-Haul International. Now, our major client is U-Haul, okay? But as I mentioned last week, my team, my group, is in charge of all the bare land developments around the United States and Canada. I kind of disagree with the statement about mixed use. We have over 60 successful mixed use developments that are a combination of new and ground up and restorations, and with over 700 tenants within there, we are very successful. Now, what makes us successful is the fact we partner. We partner with the city. We partner with the community. We listen to what you need, and we provide. And why do we do that? Well, this is U-Haul America is a family-owned business, and I said it first time. Been celebrating its 74th year in business. The family still runs the business, and their direction to us is employment, community, and doing what's right. Okay. So when we first approached the city in, I believe, 2012, and it wasn't me who was there, it was our acquisition team, yeah, they came forward and they wanted to know, can we build a U-Haul center? And they were basically just told that the plan was not going to work based on the zoning. A couple of years later, it came to me and said, David, we have an 80-acre minus 80-acre parcel, bare land. You handled mixed use and all the developments. How can we move forward and develop this property? And my comment to them was, well, I should go out to the city, get with the city, and listen to what they want, what they need, and figure out, will it work in our business plan? Through some conversations, I heard things that I was unfamiliar with. I admit that. I was unfamiliar with the need in Apache Junction for more industrial. Wow. I was unfamiliar with the fact that you were pushing more for more employment with the sales tax, and industrial was going to help you. Okay. Wow. And you needed land. And we have 78 acres of land. And all that my major client, all that the major user wants right now, U-Haul is to use 10 acres of it. Okay. So how do we get there? All right, and as a partnership, what we found out we needed to do was that the first step was to request and move forward with a general plan amendment. Okay, so we created that application. I, at the same time, with all the excitement and the rosy-colored glasses that I think, with the optimism that anything can do, will do, if you just set your sight and have goals and work towards it, was let's go ahead and do the rezoning in tandem. Now, staff, I do remember, they kind of asked me, are you sure you want to do this right now? There's a lot of things that aren't clear. There's details that aren't finished. You probably are going to maybe struggle as you go along because there's some uncertainty. And I said, no, I wanted to come through at first with the general plan amendment so that we could convert this land that will allow the city to have the land to do exactly what Elon set out. Set up for jobs, expand the industrial, generate some more sales tax, okay? Flexibility, what best serves the community. As I more thought about it, I said, well, there's a timeline. Yes, my client right now, who could be in the ground, could generate some sales tax, generate some more jobs, wants to be in there. They are financially, has the ability to do that. But in order to do it, I needed to in tandem do the rezoning in order to keep it going. So as we've gone through the process, we find out that that we need to team up with a few people, because how are we going to make this work? Well, we work with CBRE Ellis on the retail commercial side, and we've asked them, and they have come in with CBRE Ellis on the industrial side. They are the experts, okay? We have recently joined up with LGE Design Built. They are a large industrial builder here in the Valley, very well known in the Valley, Scottsdale, East Valley, West Valley. They right now have been contracted to us to update our site plan. We're curious to see where they'd like to take it. They are the experts. Again, listen to what is needed and provide, okay? That is our goal, okay? Our goal is to develop a U-Haul center and the balance of the site so that everybody becomes a winner. As staff began to provide us with the rezoning conditions and recommendations for approval, and as we went through it, there was a number of questions that we had. We sat down at a meeting a few weeks ago, and we started to hash that out. Our engineers got together with city engineers and began to hash it out. And then last Thursday, when I got the packet, I realized, you know what? Our rezoning isn't ready. Our rezoning isn't ready. The general plan is ready. It needs to happen, or we wait till next year to help you. But our rezoning isn't ready. So tonight, I'm going to ask that our rezoning be tabled maybe for 30 to 60 days. And why? Why? Because, how do I do this? Why? Because we know about the conditions of the dedications. We have no issues with that, okay? And honestly, we don't really have a lot of issues with the conditions that are being asked of us to do this. But there are some details, and there's some items like, what is it going to cost us to invest? Okay? We are financially set to do this, but we don't even know what it's going to cost us. So how can we ask you to approve something when there is information still needed? We talk about, so the question then is, what is it that were questions that are unasked? And I don't know if you can see them on your screen, but we talk about the half-street improvements and the remaining half-street. All right? This boulevard that wants to happen, we understand it's probably a good idea, but are we going to only build the half that we're on and the other half is going to be built sometime later? And is sometime later going to happen where the need isn't going to be there? Now we got a half street on one side and nothing on the other? It doesn't really make sense. Does the town, why isn't the half street built, why isn't the full street built at one time? Does the town have the money to do it? I think we have a right to ask that because we're being asked to invest millions of dollars in some items, so we're just curious. I know our chairman of U-Haul and Americo is going to ask me that. Okay? So I think there's some more questions that need to be asked about that. The cost of the traffic light contribution. We understand we'll have to contribute. Today was the first time I heard a dollar. I need to know the dollar amount so that at the end of the day, when we add up all the dollars, we know what we're going to be putting into allocating for this project to go forward. Architectural compatibility. There was some clarification. I do think there needs to be a little more discussion, okay, regarding that. ADOT. We've begun our discussions with ADOT because of the alignment and access that we want to try to put to the U-Haul site to tie into the 34th Street. We'd like to find out about their standards. What about stormwater runoff from them? Distances from the ramp. What's going to happen with the future development? You can see where I'm going. There are still some unanswered questions, and I think it's unfair for me to ask you to vote to approve and to move forward a rezoning when there's still unanswered questions. The status of interior improvements. Are these streets going to be public or private? Okay. Dedication of the cutoff corners by the engineering. We were told that the staff engineer is going to give us some information. So you can see we're missing some parts. Regional stormwater. We agreed there's regional stormwater, and we've cut our engineer loose to tell us how it can be done. That needs to be tied into a better plan, okay? The details of recommend improvements by the engineer. There's a condition in there that there's some outstanding items from the engineer needs to give us. Pavements, sidewalk, curb and gutters, streets, driveways, can go on and on. So my point is tonight, we are committed to this project. We are committed to working with you in order to give you what you need to help grow your city for employment, for sales tax, and for an opportunity in the industrial that you desperately need. So I'm asking you today to please allow us to move forward with the general plan so we don't have to wait till next year. Allow the site plan or the rezoning to be tabled for now so that we can come back with when we have all the answers and we can be a commitment to say, we're fine, let's go. At this point, I'd ask if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have some questions for you. I apologize that I wasn't here 2 weeks ago. I was working at the polls. So I might be a little redundant because I don't know exactly everything specifically discussed 2 weeks ago. But I'm going to start off with your own list here. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items that you've listed here where you want us to postpone the rezoning because you don't have the answers. Are you telling me this has never been discussed with you and staff on any of this stuff until now?
There's been discussions about that these items are coming up, but the detail has not been provided.
And are you saying that that was staff's failings, that they did not give you these things?
I don't want to blame staff. I'm saying that this project has been probably moving a little faster on the rezoning side, and I think we need to pull it in to allow all of us to be on the same page. Staff has been open, willing. I shared some information this afternoon, which obviously was shared with Rudy because he commented on it. So there's been an open line of communication. But I am telling you that on Thursday afternoon, when we got the package of what we were going to need to accept, okay, that doesn't give us ample time to put dollars to paper to know what this is going to cost us. So how do we agree to do this without knowing the dollars? It's wide open.
Has none of this been discussed?
Madam Chair, at your meeting on August 28th, we did include our preliminary list of recommended conditions. And, Madam Chair, to the best of my recollection, the only thing that is new in here since August 28th was that we're now requesting 75 feet of a dedication in Idaho as opposed to, I think our last staff report called for 50. Normally on a section line road, that's, you know, your major roads like Idaho, Ironwood, Tomahawk, it is a 100-foot wide right-of-way standard. Once again, is Idaho Road a special road to the city's future to the south? I think really that is the only change between our staff report from a couple of weeks ago and tonight's staff report. And most of our recommended conditions is basically asking the developer to meet our normal standards. We are amenable to certain plan development deviations. We talked about the signage, we talked about building heights, and really a lot of these design issues, particularly as they relate to adjacent rights-of-way, are going to be worked out in more detail when a subdivision plat is proposed. So if you look at the way some of this is worded, as we normally do, we say a lot of this stuff is to be determined by the city engineer at the time of improvement plan submittal, at the time of plat submittal, and that's really when the bulk of the details are worked out. And just one other general comment about postponing the case. Madam Chair, I guess you can, I suppose you can vote or decide to make no recommendation, but either way, it's going to the council next week, and really, it's the council's decision on whether or not they want to continue this case. If Mr. Pollock needs more time to maybe look at a preliminary plat concept, what some of these off-site and on-site improvements might cost, that's fine. The council can continue it for another 30 days, another 60 days, another 6 months, whatever Mr. Pollock thinks he needs. But I don't think it would do any harm for you to make your recommendation, because that's what it is. It's a recommendation tonight, or not, if you don't feel comfortable making a recommendation tonight.
Okay, Rudy, explain. Since we don't get, there's redesignations, this has been the first one or first couple we've had in years?
Yes, right, the general plan case is, I
General
don't see any
plan,
harm
right.
with making an
So is there's not any problem of proceeding with approving the GPA
Right.
1-18 and then just leaving that zoning change, rezoning, recommend that that be tabled to the future, to the city, or?
Madam Chair.
I mean, is there a problem not doing them together?
Madam Chair, members of the commission. Well, I think I heard two things from the applicant. I heard be tabled or
Well, whatever the-
continued for 30 to 90 days. I thought I heard you say 90,
Yeah.
36. So if you table it, basically what will happen is it's gone until it comes back by the applicant. They would have to resubmit a rezoning application. And I think there'd be another fee with that, unless they continue it. If they continue it, there would not be. And plus, you don't have to do the re-advertising. So it'd be better to continue it, because I don't think the city would want to put U-Haul in a position where they have to pay another fee. So continue it, and that'd be the recommendation for council. And council really can't act on it until you do a recommendation anyway. So they would probably go along with your recommendation to continue it, 90 days out or 60 days out.
So,
But there's no harm in voting on the general plan amendment tonight for a recommendation to council. And then the zoning matter could be
continued.
continued to a date certain.
Certain.
Correct.
Okay,
Right, Madam
yeah,
Chair, can I ask a question? Maybe
Sure.
maybe help me understand. So the general plan amendment would then it would permit U-Haul to build their 10-acre
No.
storage.
No.
Well, I think it's too Rudy, I'm sorry.
Well,
Oh, okay, I want to understand what the general plan amendment means. I mean, to me, rezoning means we're going to leave it all B1 PD and
Correct.
not move it, not turn it to B5
Correct.
PD. How does that impact U-Hauls?
U-Haul can't build until the property's rezoned, because the U-Haul element of this conceptual development plan is on the part of the property that's proposed to be rezoned
Right.
to light industrial.
but the general plan redevelopment moves it now so they don't have to wait another year, because it can only
Exactly.
be done once a year.
Yes.
And we can recommend approval of that
Right.
now to get that done.
Yes,
And then just table the rezoning
Oh.
down the road.
right,
Continue.
continue.
Or continue.
Can I go on the record with my intent one more time while I'm
Yes.
doing this? So the intent was that the general plan, which is heard once a year, and the need from what the city has told us that we want a partnership with, is to be able to have the ability to have an industrial land available that can be utilized, marketed, okay, potentially sold, potentially get applicants, purchasers, that users that can come in that will help the city with their sales tax and the employment that they're looking for, okay? If this was strictly about U-Haul, then there'd be I wouldn't pull it, okay? But this is about the entire development and the best for the community. I mean, and I agree, a lot of these items were presented, okay? I mean, if we can agree that the traffic light is going to cost me $75,000, then that's fantastic. But see, we don't know that number, okay? And I think together, we need to gather those facts in order to do the rezoning and the plat and the site plan properly. That's why the intent tonight was not to try to jam this down and work forward the best way as a partnership. Thank you.
And I still have a couple more questions for you. In your plan here, you want to, on your 10 acres, U-Haul proposes to construct a moving and storage facility at the northwest corner of the property. Exactly what is your intent for a moving and storage facility?
Okay. The U-Haul moving and storage facility, as of 2018, combines the internal climate control self-storage lockers. It provides the retail component to where customers can buy moving supplies, tapes, boxes, locks, anything having to do with moving. It's also set up for the customers to come in if they want to order a storage locker, if they want to work an arrangement for a piece of equipment that they want to share. We offer a series of pieces of U-Haul equipment that they can either order online or they can come in if they need it to use for their home, for their business, cross-country, one-way trips. We also have another product. It's called U-Box. U-Box is a container storage that is stored there. If you're doing a remodeling at your home and for X amount of time you need your stuff put away safe, we will take it. We will pack it if you want. We will store it in our building in a container. And when you're ready for it, we'll bring it back. Okay? Then we're also offering a component, which is the outdoor storage of vehicles and boats. We know that's one of the items that we have not agreed on, but that right now is currently part of the business plan. Propane will probably be offered at one time if we can get that approved. And I believe that's all the components that make up moving and storage.
You touched on this, but I can't say I can re-quote you about, my question is, what are you going to specifically do with those new companies you named about soliciting and hiring someone to build commercial structures? Because I don't want to see the desert 10 years from now still sitting there with having a U-Haul developed and the rest of the property just sitting there as desert with nothing commercial put on it. If you're going to develop this site, what's the plan to develop the commercial, the light industrial, and then the commercial?
Great question. Well, the first thing is I don't have a magic ball to forecast what's going to happen in the market, but I will tell you, I do have a magic ball to tell you that U-Haul Marico is not going to invest a dime if we didn't think we were going to be successful with this entire 78 acres, okay? So the specific question you had is, what are we going to do? So marketing-wise, we team up with CBRE Ellis Retail, Commercial, and Industrial. They are a major player in the United States. They represent us throughout the United States and Canada in terms of bringing in and soliciting and finding users as the end users there. We had talked to a couple big users before we started this. And unfortunately, they fit the mold of exactly what you were looking for the land use definition that you were asking. And unfortunately, they told us that the growth in Apache Junction, it wasn't going to support them. So they said no, okay? So that's why in 2012, 11, and 13, we're probably pretty quiet coming in. When we began to look at how we could do mixed use, and they shared a couple locations. Queen Creek is a mixed use, very successful. Buckeye will be successful if we can work out the water issue, okay? And I said we're successful at places. So CBRE Ellis Industrial and Retail Commercial will do the marketing and advertising for this property. Now, on top of it, we have GPAC that we're working with and listening to, okay? We are a well-known company and corporation, and we advertise out there around the United States as to what we have available. We'll put it on the market, put it on MLS, okay? Hopefully the calls that the city getting, they're going to share it with us so we can work together that way. We're working with the industrial developer who, like I said, who knows people, places, and things that they can bring to us and help that. So again, the goal is to continue to work towards trying to find users that will be able to be, and this development will be flexible enough. See, there's another key word, flexible. What do we mean? We don't want to lock in, and I think we had this conversation with staff, and we all agree. We don't want to lock in certain size lots, parcels, areas, because we want to make sure we have the space flexible enough for the user who comes in. Now, I don't know if that specifically answers the question, but I can tell you we'll do every effort if we're going to invest in here to get our return.
So what I'm hearing then is you and working with CBRE Ellis, have no intentions of building anything for the commercial or the light industrial?
No, building anything. No, we're going to build the U-Haul Center, and then we're going to market, and hopefully by the time we start, we have some other users, like we brought in and we attracted to the other locations. And I keep mentioning Queen Creek because that's the most closest one here that we attracted a major user. But again, without the general plan, none of this happens.
And tell me if, one of the problems we've had here in Apache Junction is people living out in Gold Canyon, people living in Gilbert and Chandler, they find that they can't store their RVs and boats there, so they dump them on Apache Junction. And if we put a condition on there that you cannot have an RV or boat storage, how is that going to affect your U-Haul business?
Well, I think at the end of the day, when we have all these costs together and we sit down as a team and say to ourselves, you know what? Sacrificing if we sacrifice the RV, what is that going to do to the overall development? Okay, these 150, 200 units, is it really going to have that much of an impact? We have found at our RV centers, we are attracting the RV and boats that are, you know, $60,000, $90,000, $300,000 units, okay? I hear what you're saying. You don't want any more RV. Tonight was the first time I saw numbers. I thank you, because now I have defense to go back to our team and said, you know what? This is why, because I'm going to be asked, why don't they want RV? Okay? Well, because they don't want people from Gold Canyon and from other places parking and leaving.
No, dumping them on us.
Okay, dumping. And I heard that last week. That's not enough for me to be able to substantiate telling them that maybe we need to consider not offering the RV. But with the numbers I saw and the fact that you are going to be consistent and not allow any more, okay, I can throw that out there. That's a business decision, okay? It's not going to break our business, but it's an amenity that we're offering, okay? Do I have that answer tonight? No, that's another reason why we pulled the rezoning, because it's part of the conditions. And I believe I need the opportunity to sit down with our board of directors and share with them where we're at.
Okay. I think I'm done for at least right now.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Robert?
Okay, so I'm looking over this list too, and Americo, almost a century-old company, biggest partner is U-Haul. You've got these sort of conceptual things all over the west of the country here. You've talked about up in Colorado, and you out here in Queen Creek, and investing millions of dollars. Are you telling me that with all of these projects and all of these years in business, that you don't have an estimated idea of a traffic light contribution?
Oh,
So, I mean, what I'm getting at here is, I mean, you're saying, hey, we wouldn't invest this millions of dollars if we didn't think it wouldn't work. But then you come back and say, well, if the traffic light's 75,000, we're good. So what would alternative 80,000? I mean, you see what I'm getting at? I'm looking at a list from someone that looks like this is the first time they're doing this, and they have no idea what stormwater would cost, or improvements by the engineering would cost, or payments or sidewalks. I mean, isn't this
Standard.
yeah, old horse for you? I mean, isn't this something that you guys deal with all the time? And you have, I mean, surely we're not, sitting up on top of a mountaintop here with extra high prices, you know what I mean? Isn't this something that you guys have a pretty good idea of what these things cost?
do we have a pretty good idea? Yes. Do we have an exact idea? No. Why don't we deserve the right to have the exact idea so we know exactly what we're asking our stockholders? If you were a stockholder, wouldn't you want to know how much of an investment that you're making? Listen, I need a check from you. We can't do that. We can't do that. Yes, we have estimates, all right? We do have estimates. We do have ideas. I've been doing this for 40 years. I could probably put numbers to it. But the reality is, we haven't had the time, now that we got the detail, the 75-foot road, we got that the other day, a detail as to what their road is. And we just heard tonight, that they're still working on making sure that they give us the right one. So there are some items that are still open-ended.
Maybe we should give you some time, let's say a year?
Whatever you want to do, whatever you like. That's what we're asking you. We're asking to approve the general plan, and we're asking so that we can have this earth available for you. And then we're asking to table the rezone so we can have this information.
Madam Chair,
Wait a minute.
No,
Robert?
go ahead.
You done? Okay. Mike.
what percentage would you say the storage is compared to the overall revenue of this 10-acre site? The storage of RVs and boats?
Of the U-Haul site or the 78 acres?
Of this 10-acre site,
Okay,
we're looking at approximately 200 spaces.
okay.
What would you say the percentage of the revenue is for that 10-acre site?
Very low.
That's
Nothing for the city. Stephen?
You mentioned, as far as attracting tenants, what type of tenant with the criteria listed are you looking to bring in?
Okay, tenants. Well, I think we've agreed on a list of what's allowed and what's not allowed. So we're going to have to go after those specific ones, those type of businesses. We're hearing from the town that they would like to see, they would rather see businesses that have a higher level of employment and a higher level of sales tax that they can generate. Great, we'll put that front line and center. But I don't think we should restrict if we have a business that could bring in 5, 10, or 15 employees that could be in there in an industrial area versus one that might have 1, 2, or 300. I think we need to be open to that.
But what would you, as a company, like to see in as a tenant?
I like to see the entire 78 acres developed within the next 3 to 5 years. That's what I like to
But
see.
tenants,
Tenants?
I mean, who are we talking about? What are we looking for?
Well, I
What
can
would
tell you
like
who's
to
not
see?
coming, because that's what you're getting at. Walmart's not coming. They were one of our clients. They're not coming, okay? A certain restaurant chain that we've been talking to is not coming because we can't get them to believe that you can support them. So for me to sit here and give you names, which I just did, maybe I'm getting slightly frustrated with the whole thing, and I apologize. But for us to be naming tenants and what we want, we know there's a list. So we're going to have to sit down and work out a marketing plan. Do we have a marketing plan? No. No. I'll be happy to share it with you. I think by the time if we were to table it and come back, we'll have a marketing plan. I'll bring CBRE Ellis with us to share their marketing plan so they can talk to you.
I know CBRE is one of the top commercial developers in the world, so I know that they have some type of plan. If you're partnered with them, I'm sure they have something in mind.
Yeah, let me
So
come
that-
back with them.
I'm very curious as to know what I mean, granted, nothing's in stone, but who are you targeting? That is what I'm interested
Right.
in.
And I will tell you, because we are so early in the game, okay, right now, that what we've asked them to do about 60 days ago is start putting together a plan, an idea, a concept of how you're going to do this. So why don't I bring them forward when we come back with the rezoning? Love to share it with you. I'm not trying to hide anything and will not hide anything. Transparency is what I want to do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I got one more question.
Yes.
As far as, you mentioned earlier that you didn't want to, segment out this light industrial because you want the needs for whoever might come to you. You want to be able to say, okay, you got this much space. So I guess, how do you actually go about that? Let's just say, for example, a car dealership rolls in here, and they say, oh, we need this much. So do you build them a car dealership and just lease it to them?
No, well, so there's a couple options that are out there that we've discussed. Do we do a land lease? Do we sell them the property? Okay.
Well, you don't sell property, you said
No,
that
I never
yourself.
said we don't sell
2 weeks
property.
ago, you said we do not sell land.
Okay,
Just-
well, then I'll take that back like I did the real estate. We are a real estate company. We do sell land, and I think I mentioned on my slide, but we would consider selling land. Honestly, I don't remember saying I didn't sell land because we sold the land to the Earnhardts in Queen Creek. So we do sell land.
That's
We
what I
have
was
sell
getting at,
land.
because you were like,
okay?
oh, the Buckeye land, we're not, we have no water, we're not selling it. We don't sell land. We're in it for the
I
long
think
haul.
what I meant by that, there was a lot of information, is we are, just because we have a piece of property that's our investment, if it's not going to work, we're going to hold it. We're not going to sell it. I did say to you, in time that I've been with U-Haul, there's only been 2 properties I know we've sold. Okay? We hold properties. We have a tremendous inventory of bare land properties and buildings around the country. That's what I meant by that. So I apologize if you misunderstood that we don't sell properties. We hold them if we're not going to develop it.
Okay. So I guess to answer my question, if someone came in, one of the options you said were to lease them, which probably doesn't generally happen, I wouldn't imagine. People who are investing millions of dollars to develop something, they want to do it on their own property, I would assume, not someone else's. And then the second option would be to sell the land and to get it.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
And it-
may I comment on
Oh,
that? When we get into
Say,
the,
where's that voice coming from?
Sorry. When we get into industrial, there are different sizes of companies and different needs within those companies. So as you start talking about industrial uses, larger companies have a propensity to lease, whereas smaller mom and pop businesses will typically want to buy because it suits their investment purposes in the longer run. So it's almost a flip-flop of what you see in commercial, where the larger companies like an Earnhardt or a dealership will want to buy that piece of land and hold that asset. As you get into industrial, there are segments of industrial that are large uses, 100,000 square foot buildings, where the manufacturer will want to come in and lease that for a long period of time, 10 to 15 years, because once they drop their equipment in there, they're going to stay. The investment is the capital and the equipment. So in the commercial side, you have one typical trend that goes on. On the industrial side, understand that it's a blend. So leasing, it does make sense to larger users. Leasing doesn't always make sense to the smaller users, but it's a market-driven mechanism. And so when companies come in, say through GPAC, you will see a blend of those that are looking for a build-to-suit long-term lease, and you'll see a blend of those that come in and are looking for a purchase of a site.
Okay. Down this way.
Madam Chair?
Peter?
I guess, Mr. Pollack, my only question is, I know you don't necessarily have a concrete answer, but I think we're trying to understand what the incentive is. If presuming we reach the point in time and we approve the rezoning, and you build out your, the storage, U-Haul storage and moving storage facility, there's what incentive? What's the incentive to push hard to put light industrial and or the commercial section? What's the incentive? Because for us, the whole reason for approving the moving and storage part of this whole application is we want to get something out of it. U-Haul's getting 10 acres to do their moving and storage and all that. For us, it's simply the future of leasing, selling, whatever that 50 acres or, the 40 acres plus the commercial. How can you give us some sense of comfort that you guys are going to really push hard to get this light industrial land developed?
Okay. Very good question. And as I sit here trying to figure the best way to answer it, it kind of goes back to the word partnership. Okay? Is everybody going to be committed towards this? Okay? I understood in order for me to sell this to the company, that we have a property that has the possibility, potential of answering some of the questions and the needs of a community. And in the beginning I said, what is the philosophy of U-Haul? It is employment, family, and community, okay? So when the community says to me that we need industrial, okay, and we need it to generate jobs and revenue, okay? And we have a piece of property, and we're willing to say, we will present this property, we will prepare this property so it's ready for that, okay? That's a partnership, okay? Now, is there a guarantee, okay, that the industrial is going to come here? So, no, and that's the risk we're taking, okay? Because I don't think you can guarantee that it's definitely going to happen. But what we're going to do is every effort possible to market it, merchandise it, because we want our money back in return, okay? All right? We want our money back on our investment. And our investment is whatever we're going to put into the improvements in order to set it up so you can develop it. But we're also taking the risk of is what I'm hearing from the partnership that we're working with, that this is going to happen. This need for industrial, this need for business and employment is going to come in here. Is it really going to happen? I want to believe it. Should I not believe it?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. were
Yeah,
you done?
are you, wait a minute, are you done?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're pretty much on target of what we need. Do you know what we don't need?
Well, you've told me you don't need more RVs.
But that has not been settled, though, has it?
No, it hasn't.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, we can set
And
it
neither
up
has
so they can
some
do
of, and neither has some of the other items that I mentioned tonight. That's why I need the opportunity to go back and sit down and have that opportunity so we can make that definitive commitment to you.
I guess my only confusion is when you first came to the city and you've been dealing, how long have they been working with you, Rudy?
We have had discussions on and off with a U-Haul Emerco representative since, I want to say early 2012. It started back when Mr. Filipowicz was here, and over the
So
years, the conversation.
they had to know that like all of these rezoning conditions would be an issue someday, eventually?
We haven't gotten into it in this much detail.
Well, that's
until-
what I'm
until more
saying.
recently.
When did it get to the point where, I'm just, I don't know if this is a reasonable question, but why didn't you go to your board 6 months ago and say, we don't know the exact figures, but do you want us to proceed to change the plan, the general plan and everything based on that these are things that we'll have to do?
Right? I think I stated that when they came to me and said, David, we have 78 acres. You handle that development. We've been unable to get the U-Haul Center by itself to be built
Okay.
in the past. Go find out what they need, and let's have a plan and figure out how we go forward. And that's only been probably within the last 6, 8 to 10 months.
Madam Chair, U-Haul originally came with these conversations that led to this point, initiated about 20 months ago, 20 to 22 months ago. And over the course of that time, we've had multiple discussions in a lot of different areas as to what could be. As we've driven down deeper into these conditions and actually talking about the conceptuals of this project, these details like the 75-foot right-of-way, that is kind of, I don't want to say out of the ordinary, there's expectations of street improvements, but the specifics of some of these details have been much more recent in time.
Okay.
And I'll take, for example, the 75-foot half-street improvement from US 60 to Baseline Road. That 75-foot, actually, staff had conversations about that internally to determine what that request was going to be, 2.5 weeks ago, maybe? And in addition to that, we're still looking at, as Rudy mentioned earlier, J2 is still working on a conceptual design. So for an applicant in this case, understanding that there's going to be street improvements, but what exactly are those going to look like, that question hasn't been answered. Some of these, you're absolutely right, they're typical. They're things that we go through and we request of folks, but there are some major, and a half street for a half mile, understanding what that looks like. That's something that definitely is, it's a piece of information that's beneficial for the applicant to have more concrete details for. But yeah, these conversations have been going for about 2 years, but when we're getting down to some of these details, they were more recent. I think the applicant submitted the application in May, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. And prior to that, the discussions were on and off for about a year and a half prior.
But other than the boulevard, like Robert said, most of these are standard, aren't they? That they would have known that they were coming.
That's a Rudy question, but I would say that, yeah, most of them. The only other comment I would have is like the regional stormwater. That was something that came up in a discussion about 4 weeks ago in terms of the development across the street has handled their stormwater on a regional basis. You know, they have larger retention basins versus on other properties. My understanding is that it's usually handled, each individual parcel or property handles it on its own. And so that was a question that came up that maybe it was handled differently there, and some of those details were discussed, but not necessarily finalized. Our on-site engineer made the comment during that discussion that, well, the regional stormwater probably isn't working as well as we would like it to, so we need to talk about how to handle that. So a question like that, yeah, they know they need to deal with stormwater, but when it comes down to, is it going to be this or that, because both of these things were brought up in a conversation, those are the details that are expected but haven't quite been hammered out yet.
Madam
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
if I may ask Rudy a question. When is the drop dead deadline for doing the general plan amendments?
Well, according to our general plan, there is a specific date mentioned and, or actually a specific week mentioned. I think what it says is, general plan amendments shall be decided once a year at the council's second meeting in September. So I think we have interpreted that to mean that any general plan amendment cases that we have in a given year need to go to council for public hearing at their second meeting in September. However, it is council's prerogative to continue a case if we want to. I think we have met our statutory requirement to present cases on a single night of the year. But then, if the council wants to continue a case, I believe they have the prerogative to do so. In this case, we have a two-part request. We have a general plan amendment, we have a rezoning. If the council wants to decide on the plan amendment and continue the rezoning, that's fine. If they want to continue both, I don't think there's really any penalties or repercussions for doing so.
And if I can, so there's another option tonight, and that is to continue both items. A recommendation to continue both. Let council decide what the deadlines will be, and then they could send it back to P&Z for the recommendation.
Right.
And that would give you all some more time to look into it. I don't know how long the council would want to go, but that's another option.
That's what I was just going to ask you is, could we recommend approval to city council and ask them that our recommendation is that they continue it and return it to us for there to be more time?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, may I ask a question
Yeah.
or a clarifying statement from Rudy? So if the general plan amendment was moved forward tonight for recommendation, but the zoning was recommended to be pushed forward, essentially on that property, we would have a property that is now prepared for that, to remove that 18-month issue, but it doesn't change the zoning, so nothing could go on that property except what it's currently zoned for.
Right.
And one of the greatest economic development benefits at this time is this removal of this 9 to 18-month barrier that we have. The zoning does not change. We would essentially have a property, what's the proper wording for that, Rudy? Zoning that doesn't...
Until the zoning changes, the property is still subject to the plan development conditions under the previous ordinance. Even though the land use designation may change, until the rezoning process is finished, it's still under the old development plan.
So
all we have to deal with tonight, if we are going to move forward, is the general plan and recommend to city council that we recommend that they continue, and send it back to us
Yes,
to continue.
on a date certain.
That's one option, but the other option is to approve both.
Well,
Another option is to do what Mr. Pollock wants you to do, which is just to approve the
Well-
general plan amendment and then basically have the council continue the zoning. But what Alon said was right. One good thing would be if you do send it to council for the recommendation, let them decide to continue to get
what
out
kind
of
of
the recommendation to council to essentially extend the time.
Okay,
Because that's what probably needs to be done because of the crunch that you're getting into with the general plan.
okay.
And that's what's causing the crunch.
Again, Madam Chair, if you folks feel comfortable with the proposed land use, that it's going to be 28 acres of some sort of commercial development, and the balance being 10 acres, 8 acres, whatever ends up being of U-Haul, and the balance B5 PD, the land use, I think you can separate the two, if you will. I mean, we just did it with Lennar. Lennar came forward with a general plan amendment. They felt they had details to work out on the final site plan, what ADOT is doing, what is access to the site. So in that case, they decided not to do a general plan amendment and a rezoning at the same time. They're going to come back and do a rezoning. So I see that was just what they wanted to do. In this case, U-Haul decided, excuse me, that they wanted to process them simultaneously. So I think if you're comfortable with the land use recommendation to amend the general plan, you forward that to the council or not. I mean, you can recommend for or against, and then you can do, I think it makes sense to ask the council for a continuance for a date certain, sending it back here, because I'm guessing they're going to want you to work out the details, and you're going to want to make a recommendation to them.
So do you have any more questions? Because we haven't got to the last two, if they have any questions.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, I know.
No, I have no questions.
You and Willie, any questions? Nothing?
I think most of mine have been answered.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to address us? Come on, somebody. Nobody? Okay, I'll close the public portion and we'll open it for any discussion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So Larry, take Americo out of the GPA 218 and just say we want to change it. Is that a viable way of looking at it? We don't have to have somebody that wants to change it. We can change it here, correct?
Yes, I think that's really what you're looking at, is you have a 78-acre planned development. It's certain, the land use designation is what it was when it was adopted in 2010 with the general plan. So then you could, just for the sake of discussion, whether Americo here or U-Haul is here or not, look at the land use. Is this 28 acres? Does this make more sense now? And then the rest of it, the L shape, upside down L, does that make sense for B5 PD? That's the land use question that you have before you.
Madam Chair, that kind of clarifies something for me, that this is something we need to move forward without muddying the waters on that. As far as this recommended motion for PZ 218, we're going to get our biggest bang from the buck by changing this general plan to what it is that they want as far as that property is concerned. So I personally, I think we should just move forward with both of these things as they stand. And as it was mentioned earlier, let council decide how they want to proceed with this. For us to tell them, bring it back to us. I think we're just spinning our wheels. I think we're creating an issue here that doesn't need to be created. Let the council decide if they want to move forward with this or not. I think our goal here is to go ahead and approve these two.
Do you have any conditions or anything?
None.
Okay. Stephen, do you have anything?
Nothing on this.
Okay.
I don't see a problem with the continuation, but as Commissioner McGraw just stated, it may just be causing us to kind of spin our wheels and delay the inevitable.
Nothing? Anybody?
Well, I guess, okay, a couple things. One, I am in favor of moving forward with to vote on the general plan amendment. I do think that's an important step in this process because, just because we talked about it and the fact is that this may be I believe would be a better use of this land. Same time, I think I would be comfortable in my motion to continue the rezoning application because I do think I'd rather let you all have the opportunity to go through this and work with staff to look at the rezoning. So that being said, then I need to go through, I'm now looking at the findings for the general plan amendment. So we'll go through this, and if you have anything you would like to add, relative to these findings. Does anybody have anything to say first before I indulge myself in this thing? Okay. So first on the findings. A is the land use map amendment proposes a land use designation that the land use plan map does or does not adequately provide optional sites to accommodate. And the staff report indicates that it does not adequately provide. But again, I think if I'm understanding, it's another case where after having had a number of years trying to create commercial opportunity, we're finding that's not working, and now it's important that we create the opportunity for light industrial. Therefore, I would say that it does adequately provide. Anybody object? We're okay then. B, the land use map amendment does or does not constitute an overall improvement to the general plan and is not solely for the benefit of a particular landowner at a particular point in time, and is consistent with the overall intent of the 2010 general plan. And I believe it does constitute an overall improvement. Again, if we can, get this redesignation of the land, that would provide the opportunity for hopefully bringing in the light industrial. Anybody in the comments? The land use map amendment is or is not justified by an error in the 2010 general plan. Again, going back, looking at the 2010 general plan, the consideration was for more commercial space and or commercial land and not light industrial. Therefore, there wasn't adequate accommodation for light industrial. So I would say it is justified. Again, anyone agree, disagree? All right, the land use map amendment is or is not generally consistent with goals, objectives, and other elements of the 2010 general plan. And I would say it is just simply because we would love to be able to get that land repurposed and then get the opportunity for bringing in some light industrial business. E, the land use map amendment is or is not justified by a change in community conditions or neighborhood characteristics since adoption of the plan. Again, my recommendation is that it is justified simply because of the change in the environment from the recession and the fact that there's not been as interest in the power center, if you will. F, the land use amendment will or will not adversely impact a portion of or the entire community by, first, the significantly altering acceptable existing land use patterns, especially in established neighborhoods. I don't think it will not. B, significantly reducing the housing to jobs balance in the planning area. Again, I don't believe that would be an issue, so it will not. Again, jump in if you disagree. Substantially decreasing existing and future water supplies. And going back, we need to I would presume that they will be able to demonstrate they have appropriate water supplies. D, replacing employment with residential uses.
Definitely.
Again, the plan, it will not, because hopefully we're going to be creating the opportunity for more employment. E, requiring additional and more expensive improvements to infrastructure systems and/or proximity to municipal facilities and/or services than are needed to support the prevailing land uses, and which therefore may impact the level of service for existing and proposed developments in other areas. And I don't think that's going to be,
Well,
I don't think that's going to adversely impact that. And then F, increasing traffic without mitigation measures on existing roadways beyond the planned level of service, and that negatively impact existing and planned land uses. And I don't think we're looking at a substantial increase in traffic, so no, it will not. G, affecting the existing character, i.e. visual, physical, and functional character of the immediate area. I don't think that'll be adversely impacting it. Increasing the exposure of residents to aviation-generated noise, safety, and/or flight operations. I'm hoping that that's not going to be a problem. Materially diminishing the environmental quality of the air, water, land, or cultural resources. So I believe that will not be adversely impacting the area. And then lastly, significantly altering recreational amenities such as open space, parks, and trails. Again, this land is already, it's already open space, but it'll be used for.
Using it now.
Yeah. So, all right, so, then, so now I guess
you
I
got
will
all
make
that?
them,
You want me, everybody done discussing?
any other comments?
Any other comments?
Not for the GPA.
I've got a
You're going to
comment.
go, yes.
Madam Chair, am I the only one that thinks that there's something missing, gaps in the code, as you could say?
Whom?
Huh?
Something missing, something just doesn't seem right? Like this is getting rushed through, just to get it rushed through, and then we're just stuck with it after the fact?
But
Well,
we're not stuck with anything, we're just saying that we are
Oh,
approving the general plan.
right, and then it's gonna come back, hey, the general plan's already approved, why don't you just change the zoning?
Well, that doesn't necessarily follow.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
but
sure
that-
it will.
Okay, I guess
Well-
I guess I thought that if we believe that this land could be better utilized by allowing light industrial to cover, to be utilizing a majority of that land.
You know, I
is
guess
that a
it's not
bad
the
thing?
idea, it's it was the whole presentation that just left me sour. The whole idea of it's great, I mean, I'm behind it, it just seems like, we're a recommending body, it's almost as if we get a need to know sort of situation, we're gonna tell you what you wanna know, which is, and then that's all there is to it.
Yeah, but that still doesn't mean that the recommending approval of the general plan couldn't be to recommend to city council to return it back to us.
I know, but the whole point behind the general
This is
plan-
just getting it done by the deadline so they don't have to wait another year.
How convenient.
Well,
That's my point. It's like, we're doing this to get it, so they don't have to wait another year, but yet some of their issues.
I want you to ask Elon, though.
I'm just
It's not
stating
like-
my opinion. You can
No,
make
no,
a
no, I
motion
know,
and
but
I'll
they
vote
didn't.
my
It's
way.
not like they came to us at the last minute to want to get this done at this date that has to be done by the second meeting of the council in September.
You don't think
Matt-
coming today was a last minute saying
When did they
continue?
start, though?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So again, this initiated conversation started 20 months ago. The application came in close to final deadlines because they're trying to make a decision as to how to proceed forth. If I may, the zoning portion of this is kind of the portion that's going to determine the out-of-ground and the improvements, correct? So the general plan amendment has been discussed for an extended period of time, and their determination to move forward came after a lot of input and thought from both the city and external parties. as far as development goes, they can't proceed forth with anything without the zoning. So without a zoning approval, it sits as it stands. But what it does do for the city with the general plan amendment improvement is change the potential use, which you made a statement earlier, take Americo out of this, okay? Or Commissioner McGraw, take Americo out of this. At this point in time, let's say Americo sold this piece of land. What a general plan amendment has done has put this land in a position where the city can be responsive, regardless of ownership, regardless of project. Americo is asking for the opportunity to extend their zoning hearing so that they can better answer some of the questions for themselves and potentially better answer some of the questions for commission and council regarding marketing, regarding these other things that you've requested, that it's short period of time to be able to do that right now. And that's my understanding as it's been presented to me, or as discussions have occurred today.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the basic question, the fundamental question is, does the commission believe that the city could benefit from additional land designated for industrial? If the answer to that question is yes, then recommending approval of the GPA is probably a good idea. The rezoning will come later, whether it's Americo or whether it's somebody else. Like we mentioned a little bit ago, until that rezoning issue is resolved, whether it be this applicant or another applicant, the old ordinance, the old conceptual development plan stays in place until somebody proposes to change it. But would we like to see additional industrial opportunities next to an existing industrial site, whether it's developed by Americo or somebody else? It's a land use decision that you may or may not believe creates opportunities for the types of things that the city believes it needs.
So what you're saying is, in other words, recommend to the city council approval of the GPA
If you want to, a little
and
bit ago.
continue the rezoning.
Well, it's going to happen as a matter of fact anyway.
Well, we
because-
haven't discussed all the issues here, and they haven't looked in
Yeah.
for the rezoning,
there-
so.
it's still a ways down the road.
Right.
on that, yeah.
And we can, all of those issues as far as RV storage and this, that, and everything else will happen under the rezoning.
Our biggest bang for the buck is going to be B5 PD. Bottom line,
Is which?
is going to be the commercial
Oh,
industrial business.
Right.
That's the biggest bang for our buck right now.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I guess what I would recommend is that you have two different motions. That's the way it's going to the council. There's an ordinance for
Okay.
the rezoning and then the GPA.
oh, these aren't tied together.
Well, they're presented together, but there's two separate motions,
Oh.
So
so
I'm doing, yeah, I'm
that should clarify.
we'll do
separate
two separate motions.
Yeah.
So, okay.
One for the
Okay.
general plan amendment, one for the rezone.
We did the findings. So I'll call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council the approval of General Plan Amendment Case GPA-1-18, a request by Americo Real Estate Company, represented by David Pollock, to redesignate 50 acres of the 78-acre property located at the southeast corner of US 60 and South Idaho Road from community commercial to light industrial/business park for the purpose of facilitating a rezoning and plan development amendment for the property to allow it to be developed with retail and light industrial uses that are more conducive and responsive to the current economic and market factors, subject to the findings listed below. And the commission did review each of the findings, A through F, and have determined that this amendment case does fulfill all the findings are adequate and appropriate for approval of this motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes?
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair. This case goes to council next week with your recommendation of approval on the general plan amendment. And now we respectfully ask for your motion on the rezoning case PZ 218.
We don't need to make any findings on this individually?
No, ma'am,
No,
the
no, for mo- no,
rezoning
we're-
has some recommended conditions,
Okay, I
but
just wanted
you
to make
can,
sure.
you can recommend to approve as is, change the conditions, or recommend that the council continue it to a date certain.
Madam
Does
Chair?
it- Wait a
So-
minute. Does anyone have anything they wish to add? Any recommendations for the zoning?
Madam Chair,
We're continuing it, didn't it?
yeah,
Well,
we're
we don't know.
continuing
That motion hasn't been made yet.
Okay,
though.
all right, well,
Just as a discussion point, the RV boat and storage is going to be a major point for me, just so that the applicant can
It will be for
knows.
me also.
It will be for me, just as a discussion point.
Okay. I'll call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council that the rezoning application PZ-2-18 be continued for a period of time not to exceed the date of November 13th,
Oh,
2018.
I didn't think you were going to make a date certain.
I know you did.
Sorry.
Can you just restate the date, please?
November 13th, 2018.
That is
It's
Tuesday
approximately
night?
60 days.
That's a Tuesday night, correct?
Yes,
Is
it's a
that-
Tuesday night.
Okay.
It's the second Tuesday.
Is that adequate time?
The applicant requested 60 days, so I think that's adequate.
It's-
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Second.
I screwed up.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair. This case also goes to council next week with your recommendation that council send it back to you for your recommendation on November 13th, 2018.
Okay.
Good job.
Let me
Blah, blah, blah.
entertain, Do we have any old business?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do we have any new business?
None's on the agenda.
Okay. Information and reports.
We are having a public information meeting tomorrow night from 6 to 8 on that active transportation plan that Rudy referenced earlier, that J2 is helping us lead. So that is at the Multi-Gen Center tomorrow night from 6 to 8. There are some upcoming joint meetings with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Park and Rec Board. So I'll get you those dates. I can give them to you quickly, but the first joint meeting is going to be October 9th. And then there's another joint meeting on January 8th. So this is scheduled to go to the council, go through one more public meeting after this, also go to the Festival of Superstitions. We're going to have a booth there. And so there'll be tomorrow night's public informational meeting, another one in November, Festival of Superstitions, a booth. Then you'll have a joint meeting, October 8th, and then January 8th. But I'll let you know of that schedule. So I just want to make sure if you were interested in attending tomorrow night. It's an open house format, so you can kind of drop in and come and go as you like.
Okay. Do you have a director's report tonight?
Not tonight, madam.
Okay. Selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on September 25th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the City of Apache Junction City Council Chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard, Apache Junction.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, and if I hear no objection, I will adjourn this meeting at 9:43.